The left will never stop their agenda to take over America. You are their enemy, and they will not negotiate. Prepare yourselves. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
Hood County News. It is the Granbury Hood County paper, and I don't know what the subscription rate is anymore, but it seems to me that there's a, kind of a circle going on of Dave Eagle, who's the county commissioner, Hood County commissioner, Steve Biggers, who's the GOP chair, and Katie Lang, who's the county clerk, and they're getting free advertising, and it kind of circles from one to the other. So when we're looking at the Hood County News, we've already in other shows stated where they stand politically, where they stand on Christianity, where they stand on religious liberties, things like that. And go back and look at some of the other shows. And this is all fact, people. This is what Kathy Cruz writes in her paper, and she can. This is the Hood County News, owned by Paul Hyde, and Kathy Cruz is a staff writer, and they do a great job at getting out their message. And kudos to them. But if you're conservative, you need to pay attention on what they write, what the headlines are about, and who they try to go after politically. Well, today in the studio, we have Commissioner Dave Eagle, Precinct 4. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here, and glad that I'm on the front page again. I really appreciate the free advertising that Hood County News likes to give me for some reason.
That's better than having to pay for it, isn't it?
Well, that's true, and I've just never thought of a ballot numbering issue as being a front page type of story, but I guess in Hood County it is.
Well, see, you get to mix in other characters. So the Hood County judge is now involved. The old or ex, I guess you should say, election administrators involved, Michelle Carew. So, you put all these characters in there, and I think, what happened in today's paper, which is Wednesday, December 28th, there's a headline that says, Eagle disputes that AG opinion sides with Carew on ballot question. And then the article goes on, and you're in it, of course, and Katie Lang, the county clerk's in it. And can you explain some of the things that I guess the judge said in it about trying to apologize, or what was going on with that?
Well, and I received an email from Ms. Cruz while she was writing this story, or my contention is she's already got the story written when she reaches out. But whatever the case, she kind of does a bait. She baits me a little bit when she goes, well, the county judge, he's basically stating that I owe her an apology. That's Miss Carew, because she was fully vindicated by this AG opinion. Well, I don't read it that way. I don't see how anyone was fully vindicated. The AG opinion really doesn't stand for anything, especially after 19 months. They basically punted it.
They did, and I read through part of it, and what it looks like to me is they kind of punted it to either maybe a court, a further judge, or maybe the legislature.
That's a conclusion I came to, and they give you hints, basically, or maybe it's not even a hint, but on their first opinion, they talk about, well, a court could find that the machine-generated method of numbering ballots, like the option of pre-printing numbers on blank ballot stock, complies with Section 52062 of the Texas Election Code. 52062 is the statutory provision that's been at issue from the get-go. And stating that the court could find, basically it's telling you, number one, it needs to be taken to court. And number two, it's really just saying, well, they could. They may not. And if you go look in the dictionary, could is a basically provisional term like may or they might. So that's not a decision. That's basically sending it back and saying, you need to take this to a court.
So what Kathy Cruz says, from what the judge says, is that he wanted an apology from you and Katie Lang and all the other Republicans, because this is the whole reason that Michelle Carew quit, lost her job, whatever you want to say. But if you go back to our other videos, once again, you can go back, and there's so much in there, and everything from Mark Zuckerberg and trying to accept that money and how big that just exploded throughout the whole United States. And everything else that she had done or not done through her job, it was her own choice to resign and walk away. She did not get forced out. It was, she wrote her own resignation letter and said, I have other plans. So when it comes to that, I think the judge is kind of off his mark once again. But it makes for front page news, according to Kathy Cruz, because that's what the judge does. He wants to weaponize the Hood County News against his political enemies or his political whatever you want to call it. And that's just what we've seen in years past with the Hood County News. If the Hood County News doesn't like some political figure, they're going to be all over the front page in a negative connotation until you read through that whole article.
Well, yeah, that's true. I agree with you. And the interesting thing about Miss Carew and her departure is that she not only resigned of her own free will, but she resigned standing at the podium and announced that she was going to run against Katie Lang. So she resigned and announced her candidacy for county clerk, which, by the way, she lost miserably in that race, right. But that's another topic for another time. But if you want to reach back to the former elections administrator, this is something I've wanted to at least make my comment about. I have been chastised by the left in this county and accused of running off the prior elections administrator. And that is not true. I have done some research, and when she left to go to Parker County, she went to a $10,000 raise. And so it wasn't about leaving here because of Dave Eagle. It was because she went there for about a 20% raise. So I want to clear that up while we're here, because the Hood County News likes to spin things and blame somebody when actually people move and they go to different jobs for different reasons besides Dave Eagle ran them off.
As we go through here, and we've been talking about elections administrators and, library directors and things like that all through the last 6, 7, 8 years here in Hood County. And once again, it's front page news because the Hood County News and the people that own them and work for them have a different opinion than, let's say, the Republicans, conservatives, more along the Christian side of, I guess you can call them the right, whatever term fits you. But as we go through this article, at the end, they go through targeting, Michelle Carew and whatnot and Hood County Elections Administrator. At the end of the article, it talks about your response and Katie Lang's response. And you both wrote out kind of, I guess, what Kathy Cruz asked you for in an email. And did she publish everything in there that you wrote?
No, she didn't. But I'll give her credit for this. For instance, she gave me the last word. Mm-hmm. And if you look at that last paragraph, well, not the one about the PDF, but the last paragraph, as for Massengill's belief that an apology is in order, I stated I believe the county judge should read an AG opinion thoroughly before making a sidebar comment about what someone else should do in response to said AG opinion. And what I meant by that is he's out there saying that she's totally vindicated, and I'm going, where do you see that? All you got to do is read the opinion. And to give Kathy Cruz credit, they got a PDF of the AG opinion, apparently, where you can go to their website. Well, I urge people to go read it for themselves. Go read the opinion. Don't take Kathy Cruz's spin on it, because the opinion says what it says, and it doesn't say what she says it says.
Right, and if you look at the summary and you go through all the, 6 pages of the opinion?
Pretty much.
And you go back down to the summary, and it explains kind of what we said in the beginning of the show. 52.062 of the election code, which was what this whole thing was talking about. And I really wish that the county attorney, Matt Mills, would have written it a little bit different as far as just say, hey, 52.062, what does it mean? And where do we go from here? And let, I guess, the AG explain that. But in order for the AG to explain it, I think, like you said, I think they really wanted to punt this to a court or the legislature. And maybe the clarification does need to come from the legislature.
Well, and that's true. And if you look at it from the standpoint of the AG, for instance, the Attorney General is under the executive branch. The Secretary of State is under the executive branch. So who knows what's behind the scenes with the Ken Paxton? Does he want to go in there and trump what the Secretary of State's saying? Maybe he decided that's not his job. I don't know what they were thinking when they wrote this AG opinion, but basically to me it's telling you either need to file this issue with a court and get probably a DEC action, declaratory judgment action, and have a judge rule on it, or the legislature needs to go back in there this next session and clarify if 52062 doesn't mean what it says, then repeal it.
Right.
It's that simple.
Yep.
Or clarify it. And that's what I told Ms. Cruz in my email to her.
And it makes sense. I don't think, you look at the AG opinions and some are pretty concise and, as a matter of fact, has it all spelled out. And some are, I guess, kind of ambiguous like this one. Now, in the part, it does say that the Hood County Elections Administrator selects the ballot numbering method for certain elections while the Commissioner's Court selects the voting system. But they still didn't explain the rest of the story.
Right. And the point number one about the court could find that the machine-generated method complies with 52062 until the court does find that, then that's still speculation. And so they have to nail down what her methods are available before she gets to choose from them.
Right.
And in my opinion, this AG opinion does not speak to that.
So maybe if it's written a little bit differently, or I don't see anybody really taking this to the legislature and say, hey, look at it. Maybe the Elections Administrator Association may, who knows? But I think as far as the elections administrators and most of the counties, they probably want this as ambiguous as possible. Well,
probably, and because then they can kind of do what they want, and that's certainly the Keith Ingram with the Secretary of State. He's the one that comes out with these AG bulletins where they waive this and waive that, and I don't like that practice to begin with, and but I guess in fairness to him, we went from paper ballots until about 15, 20 years ago. A lot of counties went to DRE equipment, direct read software, where there was no paper. And so how do you handle that how do you reconcile that with 52062? You can't. Mm-hmm. You got to look the other way, so to speak. And I think that's what happened, and the Secretary of State puts out his bulletin and said, hey, this is, look the other way. But now that the voters seem to me want to come back to a paper ballot situation. We have a hybrid situation now where you actually have a piece of paper that you insert into the machine to tabulate your vote. To me, it brings 52062 back into the focus, and we just need clarification on it.
You want your vote to count.
Absolutely.
Right, and you want a paper trail or forensic trail of who voted, if they voted at all, and that way you can count your votes. And, we don't want to be like other states with a lot of this voting junk going on, and you can very easily, depending on which county you're in, slip back into that.
That's true, and, there's really the AG doesn't really have any guidance on this. I guess there's no case law whatsoever because of the transitions that have been made. I haven't been able to find any other AG opinions on point. So it's like between the executive office and the legislative office, and then, of course, the judicial office, the judicial branch hasn't been called on yet. They're all like, somebody needs to give us some guidance here. And right now, it's not there.
So going back to the beginning and the first line of this article, Hood County Judge Ron Massengill is calling on Precinct 4 Commissioner Dave Eagle, County Clerk Katie Lang, and other fellow Republicans who allege that former Elections Administrator Michelle Carew broke the law, and goes on and on and on. So to start this whole article, you would say it started from Judge Ron Massengill. who either called Kathy Cruz or Kathy Cruz called him once the AG opinion came out. So I think there's still something going on with the judge that he's got to use the Hood County News as, in my opinion, kind of a weapon. And I brought that up earlier. And I know it's been done in other counties. I know it's been done with environmental. But when you start getting elected officials trying to weaponize against other elected officials, I think you're running into a sad state of affairs and what they do on the national level. This is national level stuff. This is like somebody going, to CNN and back and forth to CNN to control the narrative.
True, and one thing, there's an assumption here when you read this article that it makes some kind of difference what the county judge thinks we ought to do. Number one, he's just as far as the commissioner's court concerned, which he has trouble with this, he is the presiding officer of commissioner's court. It's not judge's court, it's commissioner's court. And so I really don't care what he thinks I ought to do. It's none of his business. He needs to stay in his own lane, number one. And number two, his take on this AG opinion is totally wrong. I would debate that with him anytime he wants to. And I'm thinking that, well, if the Hood County News is springboarding off of what Ron Massengill is asserting, then you're right. They're just carrying water for him. And, he's gone, like he said, he's gone after other elected officials. He not only used the Hood County News, but he's used other department heads to go after other citizens in this county, in my opinion. So I don't know if anybody cares what the judge thinks, to be honest with you.
I think it's getting less and less when people get to see what is really going on and they have at least a second view of what's going on other than the Hood County News. And, I say it time and time again, great job, Paul Hyde and Kathy Cruz, for getting your side of the story out. Now, it doesn't follow what your mission statement, says, but it is entertaining. I don't know if it's non-biased, but you just kind of laugh at that.
Yeah,
it's
non-biased.
It's nothing but bias. But your paper, you can do what you want, but we're going to debate you, and we're going to put this out here and talk to you about it. And speaking of debate, Dave, you said that you would debate the judge about this AG opinion. You go back and forth. Judge Massengill, you want to come into the studio anytime, sit down with Commissioner Dave Eagle. More than happy to just run this debate for you guys. You can talk about the AG opinion, anything else you want. Love to have you here.
Yeah, Judge, come on in here. We'd love to talk about this with you. And I'll be gentle.